You got me wanting to want you, but I don't think you like me like that.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Horchata, Mamita back for another video. And now that we're bringing in the new year, I thought it'd be time to discuss New Year's resolutions, creating New Year's resolutions, reflecting on the past year, all that good stuff. With that being said, if you are new here, welcome. If you are not, welcome back. If you have some hot cocoa or a warm drink or comfort food that you like to grab, take a second to go do that right now, because you and Titi Styles are gonna have a little chit chat. First and foremost, I think in order to prepare for a new year, you can't just scratch what's already happened, right? Like, I don't believe in the whole new year, new you thing. If there's a firm non-believer, that's me. That's not to say I have a narrow mindset on, like, you know, reinventing yourself or like rebranding. I firmly believe that you can do that, right? I'm an advocate for that. I think it's important to check in with yourself. And if you watch my content, you know that I am a firm advocate of like bettering yourself, like doing the inner work, reflecting, all that good stuff. Like, improvement is always good and it's always a goal. But I think in order to better yourself, in order to work towards, you know, again, the dream version of yourself, the best version, the highest version of yourself, you need to take a look at who you've been up to this point, right? It's not like you can just pretend like the past 20 something years or however old you are haven't happened. Like, because those experiences, those years, the situations that you've been in, all the circumstances, all these things, the people that you've surrounded yourself with, the memories, all these things contribute to the person that you are today. And you are not going to be the person that you want to be in 5, 10, 20 years without considering the person you've been up to this point, if that makes sense. Like, that person, that future you would not exist without you now. So it's like, it's important to really be introspective and like take a second to think about, like, not only like who am I today, but who have I been and what has my journey looked like up to this point. And I think as you know, prepare to make goals for yourself coming into the new year, and mind you, I think this is something that you should be consistently doing, not just when New Year's comes around. Like, but I think that is a great opportunity, as you know, we approach a new year, to really, like, again, be introspective, be reflective, and really turn a new leaf and thinking about, like, what have I experienced up to this point? Who have I become? Who have I been up to this point? In order to then work towards the person that you want to be, right? Because if I were to use an example, it's like, and I've told this to other people before, but like, if you're running a marathon, you can't think about mile 10 if you don't focus on mile 2, you know? Like, if you don't think about how mile 1 went. All of these things contribute. I mean, the most important thing is being present and being with yourself as you are now, but you can't just like erase who you've been or what you've experienced up to that point, because again, what you have experienced before is what makes you you now. So with that being said, I think the first step in working towards your goals, thinking about what you want your next year to look like as we approach 2026, it's important to really reflect on how 2025 went for you. I have a few like questions that could prompt reflection and really start, again, digging deeper into like how the year actually went. Some things that I've thought about was just like, overall, I think initially thinking about how the year went holistically. When you first think about 2025, like how this past year went, what comes to mind? Like, what experiences come to mind? Like, what are the overall themes and feelings attached to the year? Because I feel like usually each year does have that, you know? Like, obviously there's pain, there's grief, there's sadness, there's joy, there's elements of every type of feeling in every year, because that's just a circle of life. But generally, if you could like put a feeling to the year, what would that be? Would it be excitement? Would it be curiosity? Would it be fear? What overall feeling, what overall theme would you associate with the year? And in addition, again, what themes come up for the year? Like, overall, again, thinking bigger picture. And I think with that, also thinking about like, what are some key lessons that you've learned? Like, I feel like that's super important, because again, you have different experiences and they prompt different feelings, but they also teach you different things, and that could be good or bad. Sometimes the things that you want to learn don't feel the best in the moment, but like, I firmly believe God places us in situations. Obviously, he doesn't have full control, right? And if you're not spiritual, obviously you leave it at the door if it doesn't resonate with you. But I feel like God does put you through situations, and even though we have free will, he doesn't have full control over like what everyone does. I do think that like the way that things unfold is very intentional, and I think they teach you the things that you need to learn, even though it might be in a way that you don't want to learn it, maybe at a time when you don't want to learn it. When you're ready to, not even ready as in like emotionally like prepared for, but like when you're in a season of life where you are meant to learn a lesson, you're gonna learn it. And so asking yourself, like, what are some lessons that I've learned, good and bad? What are your highest highs and your lowest lows? Because again, each year does bring that. So it's like, maybe you got a promotion this year, but on the flip side, maybe you lost someone that you love. And those two different things obviously cause conflicting feelings. But again, they've been pivotal in your journey because they do really affect the way that you're feeling now and where you are at now. Because maybe, again, if we're like digging deeper, it's like you getting that promotion, obviously maybe that was on your wish list for 2025. Maybe that has allowed you socioeconomic mobility and more economic opportunities. But on the flip side, losing someone that you love obviously causes grief. I just think thinking about, again, holistically, how do these things affect you? Because like, even though you have more money, maybe it's harder to manage the money now. Like, maybe even though you lost someone, there are some additional pros that came with it. Like, maybe you learn the value of community, or you learn to appreciate the people that you have in your life more. There's always silver linings to the bad things, and I think sorry guys, I'm like catching a cold. But on the flip side, I think there's always, I mean, I don't know what the alternative is, but like there's always maybe something potentially like challenging that comes with a high, or like it comes with good news or like an opportunity. Thinking about, again, what challenges you've overcome and what challenges are you in the process of overcoming. I don't believe in starting completely clean slate. What you have been working on, I think each year you kind of build on. And like, obviously you can choose to ignore things. That's what we call avoidance though, babes. Let's not do that. I think you're always building on what you've learned. What you've experienced always affects what's coming next. Because like, even if you choose to ignore it, it's still in the back of your head. It's not like that's not a thing. Like, it's not like out of sight, out of mind, like that doesn't exist. It's still there. You're just not engaging with it, if that makes sense. So even though maybe the next year I decide, okay, maybe I'm like taking art classes. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. Like, that's not something I want to invest in anymore. And I like abandon it. That doesn't mean that like I didn't already have these years of experience doing art. That just means like I've pivoted. And so it's challenges I've overcome, but there's also challenges that maybe like I'm still in the process of overcoming, of facing. What has that looked like? How have I been tackling this? Because again, that's something that we'd want to build on for the next year. Also, generally checking in with like the person that you are now in comparison to the beginning of the year, I feel like is very important. Like, what are some ways that you've grown? What are some ways that you feel like maybe, I'm not gonna say like you've been set back, but like, what are ways that maybe you don't feel like really reflect the best version of yourself or the person that you wanted to / want to be? And I think that gives you a starting point in terms of how can I expand on the qualities that I feel like do, again, reflect that higher version of myself, that best version of myself, and how can I work on better, maybe even like eliminate or limit those qualities that I have or the ways that I operate in that aren't reflective of the best version of myself and that are very distant and keep me kind of away from that best version of myself. Going hand in hand with that, thinking about what qualities and accomplishments you're proud of, I think is very important, especially if you're ambitious, like to keep setting goals for yourself. Keep, like, I guess the phrase like pushing the ceiling, like sky's the limit. You're a go-getter. Each year you want to like go bigger. And
I didn't get that.
Girl, nobody's talking to you. Each year you want to go bigger. You want to, do better. But it's like taking a second to sit with what you've accomplished is so important, because what are we doing this shit for real, if you're not celebrating your wins? Like, and so I think it's important to really like think about like, what have I like intentionally worked on? And maybe not even intentionally, maybe what have I happened to work on that just came along the way? Maybe in the beginning of 2025, it wasn't on my vision board. It wasn't a goal I had set for myself. But as the year carried along, that is something that I did grow disciplined in. Like, that is something that I intentionally worked on. And so acknowledging your growth in that aspect, I think, is very important. Whether it be like, this year I was a better listener to my friends, or I was more disciplined, I was more patient, whatever that may have been. Or this year I got a certain prize, or I said I wanted to start this hobby and I started it. We got to think big and small also. Because you don't have to like run a marathon, you don't have to write a book, you don't have to win a prize. I mean, I use that as an example because that does count, but like, it is not limited to that. If there's anything that you feel like, this is something I accomplished, point, period, blank, like I put work into this, put time into this, you've accomplished it, and you should pat yourself on the back, babes. In addition to asking, how do I want to expand on these accomplishments that I've had and these qualities that I've gained in 2025, and these are qualities that I want to leave behind in 2025, asking yourself things like, what has raised questions or like curiosity for you? Maybe it's something I've engaged with and I tapped into, but not fully. Thinking about things that you had set to accomplish for yourself earlier in 2025, again, big and small. Thinking about, what have I actually accomplished? What have I actually achieved? And also asking yourself, like, okay, what are some things I worked towards? Maybe I didn't fully accomplish, but like I put work into and I want to keep building on. What are some things that even though I work towards, I'm okay with letting go because it's not serving me anymore, or that's not something that's as important or has as much value for me anymore? And also, what are some things that I maybe have not even scraped the surface when it came to, but that I do want to make a priority for this next year? And all these things, they can relate to anything in your life, whether it be relationships, career, money, health, fitness, spirituality. All these questions can pertain to these different aspects of your life, not just when we think about accomplishments, again, especially in the meritocracy that we live in, thinking about, you know, your professional life or like your career. That's not the only thing that's important, you know, like, and thinking about the fact that each year, I believe you have to decide what matters more to you. And it could be one, it could be a few things, but like, you can't put all of your eggs in every basket. I feel like you usually focus on a couple of aspects of your life, and that might mean temporarily not abandoning, but like investing less in other buckets of your life. And so maybe this year was a year where you felt really connected to community and you felt like you were thriving with your career, but maybe like you kind of let yourself go in terms of your health and fitness. Or maybe you feel like you didn't really talk to God as much as you wanted to, or whoever you worship, you know, whatever higher power that you believe in. Maybe you felt like your relationship with them wasn't as strong this year. So really thinking about how fulfilled you felt in every aspect of your life is really important, instead of just limiting yourself to one aspect of what, you know, a good year could look like. With that being said, once you actually reflect on all of these things, and I know I threw a lot of questions out at you guys to think about, so I understand that it probably prompts a lot of like thought. I think it can be overwhelming to think about, and this is a reminder for me, like, it's good to, as we're bringing in the new year, to take time to really reflect and sit and like journal and think about how we feel, what we're thinking about all these things. But you don't have to have it all figured out in one sitting. Also giving yourself the space to sit with these questions, to like really reflect and like let it marinate, because sometimes it takes more than a day. It takes maybe a week, maybe it takes a few weeks, maybe it isn't until February that you're a little bit more clear on what you actually fully want your year to look like. I think just starting is important, allowing yourself to get your juices flowing and activate that sense of reflection at the very least can be really helpful, even though you might not have all the answers right away. I would suggest, you know, starting out and brainstorming like what immediately comes up and giving yourself the room to expand on that. That doesn't have to be the final list, you know, like it is a process to think about these things, and then not just, again, reflect on how the year went, but also more so think about what you want this next year to look like, given how the last year has gone, given, again, how you felt, you know, everything's been going for you. As you're preparing for 2026, I think it's important to think about a few other things, such as, just like you've thought about how the year has gone holistically, it's useful to think about what is your overall vision for the upcoming year. And so also then asking yourself the same question: how do you want to feel at the end of the year? What feelings do you want? What do you want the themes to be? They go hand in hand. Like what you wanted the last year to look like and what you want this next year to look like prompts very similar questions. Because at the end of the day, like, I can say I want to do this, I can say I want to do that, but like, why I keep mentioning feelings is because that's the most important part. We might not want to admit it, but like, I might have, you know, started a podcast or opened my own business, but if I didn't feel fulfilled, if I didn't feel whatever I wanted to feel that year, I think, what's the point, you know? Like, so I think really like centering it around your feelings can be really helpful rather than fixating on the actual goals sometimes. Like you can still set them, but I think leading with that, like, I want to feel spiritually connected. I think that's a more obtainable goal than like saying, I don't want to throw an example out there because I'm not going to say your goals aren't attainable, but I think it's easier to like hone in on like the feeling of what you want to accomplish rather than like what you specifically want the accomplishment to look like, if that makes sense, and limiting it to that. Because even though you might not have achieved that one thing, like maybe I'm gonna throw an example out there. Maybe I want to open my own church. Maybe by the end of the year I haven't been able to open up my own church. Maybe I work towards that, but at the very least I felt like I was spiritually connected. Even though I didn't accomplish that goal, the initial goal that I've had, that overarching goal, that very specific goal, it makes it feel better to know, but I did feel the way that I wanted to at the end of the year. Like, generally, I did work towards this thing that I wanted to do, which is like feeling closer to God, feeling closer to the person that I worship or the people that I worship. Again, building on what we've already talked about, think about who is that person that you want to be at the end of the year, and who is that in comparison to who you are now. Maybe this year you felt like you really didn't prioritize like your family, like thinking about the highest, best version of yourself, the ideal version of yourself. The ideal version of me is someone who's family oriented and prioritizes them. If I didn't feel like that was me last year, that is someone that I want to be next year. That's something I want to prioritize for this upcoming year. Don't beat yourself up over like maybe the qualities that you felt like you lacked. Just use that as motivation to say, hey, like this is still something that I want to work towards, and now I'm intentionally going to make that a priority. And I think as you're thinking about like the person that you want to be, sorry guys, my foot keeps falling asleep. Sorry y'all, I had to switch legs because your girl thick. As you're thinking about the person that you want to be in comparison to the last year, I think it's important and it's helpful to paint a picture of who that person is. What are you going to be wearing at the end of the year? And yeah, I'm getting very specific. We're not going to go into the whole spiel of manifesting. If you haven't seen my video, check it out. This kind of goes hand in hand with what I've said before in my video about manifesting, but the realer, the more vivid you're visualizing what you want and who you want to be, the more likely it is that you're going to achieve that vision, that you're going to make that vision come to life. You got to think about it like this way. Okay, if we're going to put in acting terms, if you're a director and you don't know what you're looking for, you're losing your creative agency, because what is this film gonna look like? Who knows? You don't even know what the characters look like. How do you know who you're gonna cast? How do you know what you want the stage to look like? How do you know what you want the costumes to look like? What are the actors gonna be wearing? You need a very specific vision of what you want. And that doesn't mean that there's not a splash flexibility. Obviously, you need to leave room for that, because I also think that's key to life. But asking yourself, again, how does this person carry herself? Like the best ideal version of Estella, and who, even though I'm not going to be necessarily exactly her then in 2026, because she's evolving, and again, you have to give yourself that freedom to continue to modify like what that is. Having a starting point is important, because how do you know what you're working towards if you're not intentionally asking yourself who you want to be, and then being able to work off of that and saying like, okay, like what habits do I need to have? How do I need to act today in order to be that person? So I think really being clear about how does she carry herself? What does she wear? What energy does she embody? Like, is she confident? Is she reliable? Is she wise? How is her health / physique? Like, how is her fitness? What is her profession? What is her routine? Then I think as we expand on that, who are you surrounded by? Like, what does your community look like? Where does your time and energy go? What are your priorities? And obviously the things that I listed later, they are building on what I mentioned in the beginning. But like, you don't think about like how even the way that you dress or the things you consume, how those affect your habits. They affect your routine. They affect your lifestyle. Because if I envision Estella, like the best version of Estella, to be healthy, to like be health conscious, to be strong, to be confident, like all of these different things, that is then reflective in my habits, in the things that I do every day, the way that my weeks look like, the way that my days look like. Because if I am healthy, if that is a characteristic of the best version of myself, that is going to affect the way that I eat. That is going to affect my nutrition. That's going to affect my lifestyle. Like going to the gym is going to be a priority, or maybe if not the gym, which that is actually relevant for me, but maybe that's not for you, being active is a priority. Maybe there's something else that I need to find that I can consistently do, whether it be going on walks. It's cold right now, babes, so y'all got that. But going on walks, or like doing dance classes, or like I know some people like solid core or Orange Theory. Doing whatever you need to do and doing it consistently in order to, again, work towards being that best version of yourself is key. And so I think asking yourself these questions are really important. And again, not being general. You got to be very specific about who this person is. Who do you want to be at the end of this year? And what am I going to do to get there? What are you going to do to get there? Because that's really where discipline comes from. I can keep yapping. I can keep going on a rant. But y'all know what I'm saying. Clearly, I'm passionate about it. Because Y'all, when I say life is so short, like it really is fleeting. Like I feel like I operate from such abundance most of the time. Like I'm just like, there's such opportunity in life, and literally it's whatever you make of it. Like that's the beautiful thing about it. Yes, there's a lot of things you can't control, but there's so much agency also in like doing all the things that you like set your mind on. But you have to, again, take the time to be intentional, to ask yourself, what do I want my life to look like? And like, who do I want to be? Because you have complete agency in that. Things can affect you, things can move you in a certain way, things can change you, but like it's up to you to ground yourself and to bring it back in and say, okay, but this is far from, or this is close to the self that I want to be. What do we want to do about it? So asking yourself these things and painting that picture of who you see yourself being by the end of 2026 is crucial. With that being said, like asking yourself, like, what qualities do you want to build on and how do you want to build on them? Again, we've talked about this before. Like, you're not starting from scratch. Maybe you want to keep working on being a good listener. What are you going to do that? Maybe you want to work on being a better communicator. You've already been working on it. Kudos to you. That sounded sarcastic, but like genuinely. If you had any growth in that, like kudos to you. That's huge. How are we going to keep expanding on that? Like, is it listening to podcasts that like help you hone in on that skill? Is it reading books about communication? Is it having like a sense of accountability among your friends to be like checking in, like, hey, I have this intention of being better at this thing. How am I doing? What can I do better? Asking yourself these questions, really digging deeper, is important to continue expanding. Again, keep the momentum going when it comes to growing in certain aspects, instead of feeling like, okay, I've grown and that's it. Like, we don't want to like lose the progress. And I don't think you ever really do. But like obviously everything's like a muscle, so like if you're not engaging with it consistently, like what was the point in working on it in the beginning? You know, you're not maintaining that. Asking yourself, what are some goals you have and how can you establish a routine to consistently work towards them? Because it's not just about, I saw this earlier and I think it's really relevant, but like it's not about intensity, it's about consistency. And so building habits is key to accomplishing these things. I've also made a video that expanded on this above if you guys want to check it out, but I think a lot of people think that it's about major action rather than small habits. Again, it doesn't always have to be dramatic, it doesn't have to be intense. Sometimes it's just like an accumulation of small things that you're consistently doing that help you achieve whatever goal that you want to achieve. Sometimes being, for example, again, if we're talking about fitness and health goals, it's not about going to run a marathon once. I think there's micro goals and there's a sense of consistency that's required and a sense of discipline that's required in order to achieve that, completing that marathon. It's the fact that you put in the work consistently. Again, it's the habits that were required in order to, again, finish that marathon that matter a lot. You could have not have completed that marathon if you didn't train for it. And so that's my point. Like, you can act in drastic ways here and there, but it's like, what are you consistently doing? Because a lot of times these drastic actions, they require a lot of small habits before you're actually taking that big step. If I'm launching a podcast, it's not just, oh, one day I'm just gonna launch it. No, girl, like there's a lot of moving pieces. There are a lot of steps in between wanting to launch that podcast and you actually launching the podcast. Like, I can't list all of them because I have not launched a podcast, but like, what streaming platforms are they going to be in? There's going to have to be conversations with that, figuring out how to put that on the streaming platforms. Like, what are the topics that you want to discuss? Sitting down and brainstorming about that. What is engaging to you and what are the different stakeholders that you need to engage with along the way in order to actually launch the podcast? A lot of these things are a lot more important than you think. And so really think about it in that way. Like, okay, these are things that I want to accomplish. I have a list of them. What are some habits that I need to form? And how can I incorporate them into my routine in order to work towards and accomplish them? And I think a lot of times it's easier to plan for this and like commit to this, to incorporate some of these micro habits in your established routine. So it's like, if, for example, I'm going to use something that I used to do before, but like when I used to work in person, I think during like COVID, I would go to the gym right before work or right after work. So it's like I was already out and that was my way of either starting my day or ending my day. And so kind of tacking that on to my day, especially when it came to location, it was like I would incorporate going to the gym in my day depending on the location. So like my job was right by the gym. So it's like I would go in the morning to the gym, bring my change of clothes, go straight from there to work because it was within 15-minute drive. So that was an easy way to incorporate, again, this new habit something that I wanted to like become more disciplined in and consistent in my routine in a way that was easy, because I didn't have to really pull strings. Like it was like right in front. Like I didn't have to go super out of my way. Obviously it's hard to start any habit, but I think making sure that you're incorporating it to your routine in a way where you're pulling as little strings as possible makes it more likely for you to actually implement them and effectively, again, work towards these goals consistently. That being said, I think it's also important to think about how you can unlearn some habits and behaviors that you want to leave in 2025. We've already talked about how you might want to like bring some stuff with you and you want to leave behind the things that don't. But like it doesn't just end there. I think it's important to think about what would that actually look like, you know? Like just like I would read a book on communication if I want to get better at communication. If I want to be less stubborn in 2026, how can I work on that? Like how can I catch myself when I am being stubborn? Again, what system of accountability do I have in place? It's easier to like accomplish things when you have people holding you accountable and you've made your intentions clear of like, this is something I want to work on. Please check me. Please call me out on my shit if this is something that I'm doing. You might not want to hear it, but it's easier to, again, stick to what you have an intention of doing when other people are looped into this goal. And then lastly, think about like, how could you dive deeper into those things that spark curiosity for you? Because like I think it's important to like continue learning and to mentally stimulate yourself. And so asking yourself like, what have I only scraped the surface of, and what do I want to continue learning about? Again, it could be in any area of your life, but like what is something that I'm really curious about that like I want to dive deeper into? Because again, I am spiritual and I believe that if you have any sense of curiosity, if you have an impulse to like learn more about something, if something makes you lean in, it's for a reason. It's not just because. Like I think you were meant to like discover that thing, to look into that thing. I think that's a big part of like feeding your soul, is like digging deeper into and like tapping into the things that really like spark your curiosity and again make you lean in. So asking yourself, what are those things that I do want to lean into for the next year, and like how can I do that? Again, big or small, whether it's starting a new hobby, whether it's continuing to dig deeper into a certain aspect of yourself, of your identity, a skill you want to gain, some talent that you have that you want to keep expanding on, whatever that may be, could be really helpful to think about. So as I've mentioned to you guys before, like vision boards are really helpful in establishing these goals and like really being intentional about your New Year's resolutions. But even if you don't want to do that, again, just journaling and reflecting, because like some people maybe aren't as visual. Everyone's a different learner, and so maybe it's not necessary for you to create a vision board. I think it's super helpful, again, to visualize it, even if you don't put it on paper, to like think about all the things that I've talked about and visualize it. To supplement that, even if you don't want to do like a vision board physically, journaling about it, like really sitting with your thoughts, like, and not just thinking about it, because I know some people might be like, oh, maybe just reflecting and like pondering. Yes, that's helpful, but again, do something with that energy, do something with those ideas, because I do think that that's what helps actualize them, putting it somewhere that you can refer to, because like we're human. Sometimes storing it up here is not enough. The thoughts can be fleeting unless you're really engaging with them. Ask yourself, how am I engaging with this thing? What can I physically hold on to? Whether it be a piece of paper for my journal, or it be something on Canva, or it be a vision board, which I'm gonna show you guys again real quick. Like this one is kind of like messed up from last year, but regardless of the form that it takes, having something that you can refer to and check in with yourself throughout the year and be like, hey, again, this is where I'm at. How closely does my life reflect that vision that I had for myself this year? It's gonna be helpful when this time of the year comes back around. Do reflect the best version of yourself next year. And you're asking yourself the same things. Oh, what did my year go? Okay, I can actually look at this and be like, did that, not where I want to be with that. And so hopefully all this information resonated with you guys. I know a lot of it was really just me asking questions again that like prompted you to reflect, but I think it's really important to think about all of these things as you're setting New Year's resolutions. I think it's a time when a lot of people are thinking about, again, who you want to be for the next year. What do you want this next year to look like? But again, in order to do that, we need to sit with ourselves now. And we need to be graceful with ourselves, validate ourselves in how far we've come. Because, again, what are we doing it all for if it's never enough? You know, if we're just invalidating and like brushing past everything we've experienced. No, that's a part of the journey, is like really being present with what we've experienced, is really looking back on and like being introspective and reflective of what has happened up until this point and how can we continue to build upon what has happened, you know? So I know I usually end up yapping your ears off. I appreciate everyone who sticks through until the end, because I know sometimes it be all over, like, girl, I have a hard time following my thoughts. Clearly, I just have a lot of big ideas. I have a lot of big thoughts. I'm an analytical thinker. I think that's a positive thing, but I really do appreciate you guys like taking the time to sit here and listen to me and tune in to my content, because like it means a lot. I feel like I really enjoy the space to like talk about like all of these things with you guys and engage with these different topics in a safe space. So yeah, y'all, I hope again what I've said in some way, shape, or form has resonated with you. I hope it's like exactly what you needed to see for the new year as you're preparing for it. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys stay tuned for the next video. Bye.
On with it and move on to the next. But if we're being real, that's just not my style.